What's going on, everyone? Welcome into the Two Stripes podcast, the college football podcast that records maybe like 5 or 6 times a year when not in season for college football because I'm so lazy. I'm just going to blame it on the fact that the last episode was Ohio State losing to Clemson, our recap of that game, and me just being too heartbroken to talk about college football. But if you follow me on Twitter or anything, you know that's not true. I keep up with college football all year round, and I've been doing stuff. But I wanted to record an episode today, and I'm going to get into that here in a second. But if it's your first time listening, I want to thank you guys for checking out the show. Be sure to subscribe when new shows do drop, once every couple of weeks or months, whenever it may be. Just search the Two Stripes podcast on Apple Podcasts. Follow along on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/twostripespod and search the Two Stripes podcast on Spotify and find all the shows there. You can also go to youtube.com/Colton Denning if you want to know what I've been up to. Everything is happening over there. I've been cutting a lot of highlight videos for players going into the 2020 NFL Draft, Ohio State players, legendary college football players. There's a player up there that I put up today by the time you're listening to this that kind of fits into today's episode, and as a spoiler alert, that's Le'Veon Bell's career highlights at Michigan State, so go check that out. I'll put this episode up there as well, and if any of the YouTube people are listening, yes, I do record a college football podcast every once in a while, and I appreciate you guys for subscribing to the YouTube channel and following along. It's really been bustling and growing, so I'm trying to help continue to grow that community I have over on YouTube. I think I got the best highlight channel for college football on YouTube. I want to continue to get those highlights out to you guys, whether it's current players or throwback players. A lot of cool stuff planned this offseason. So keep up with everything there. YouTube.com/Colton Denning. And for everybody from there listening to this podcast for the first time, I hope you enjoy it, and just know that I appreciate your support. So let's dive into what today's episode of the Two Stripes podcast is about. You know, it's mid-February, and last week I was thinking, man, there really has to be something that happens in college football for me to get off my ass and record a new show. There's really not a lot going on. I don't want to talk about recruiting. I don't want to preview spring ball yet or talk about the 2020 season. There had to be something that really struck a chord with me to get up and record a show. And thankfully, or I guess unthankfully in this case, enough, there was. And it was the big college football story, I guess continuing into now, but starting last week when Mark D'Antonio resigned from the Michigan State job, and it set off this chain reaction from Michigan State to really the rest of college football on what Michigan State was going to do the day before National Signing Day about their head coaching position. Then it dragged on into the weekend and into earlier this week. And ultimately, with Colorado head coach Mel Tucker taking the Michigan State job. And if you have followed me from Land Grant Holy Land to now, you probably just know me as like the Ohio State guy. That's my team. That's who I root for. I wrote about the team. I podcasted about the team. That's where, when it comes to college football and really sports in general, most of my interest, at least rooting wise, is focused to, is Ohio State football. But for those that don't know, I was born and raised in Boulder. I'm 29 right now. The first 27 years of my life, I lived literally 5 minutes outside of Boulder. My parents had season tickets to CU football for almost 2 decades, from I think 1988 to 2005. So I spent a lot of time when I was a kid on Saturdays going to CU games, and whenever I go back home during the fall, I make sure to go to at least one or two when I can. And when they come out to California, I make sure to go see CU play. And I still have a lot of love in my heart for CU, and I'm still a CU fan. So this is why this episode's coming out. This is why this struck such a chord to me, is I'm still a big CU guy as well. And this was such an interesting story on a lot of levels that I think it deserves to get a deep dive and deserves to be talked about, especially from the CU side, because that's a fan base that a lot of people don't hear from on a national level a lot. And this is really the opportunity to get the CU perspective of things. And really, I just wanted to unload my thoughts on this because I had a lot about it. So first things first, when we start talking about this Mel Tucker situation and what happened here, and we'll get to like the tweet and the transfer portal stuff and everything, all of the details that happened with this. But I think it's important to note that this isn't coming from a place of somebody that's jaded or jilted or thinks that Mel Tucker made a stupid move. I think any rational CU fan understands the basic principle of what Mel Tucker did. He got a assload more money from Michigan State than he was getting at CU and was going to get from CU. I think that the numbers of his salary came out. He's making $5.5 million per year. That's a 229% increase from what he was getting at CU. So I don't have any problem with that. Go get the bag, man. And when you talk about the money, it isn't just the money that he's getting. It's the money that he's allowed to play with. His salary pool is $6 million. That's $1.1 million more than what even Mark D'Antonio was getting at Michigan State. The more numbers that come out of this, the more it's obvious that Michigan State had absolutely no leverage in any of this. So shout out to Mel Tucker and his agent. They recognized they had all the leverage here, and they took advantage of it for sure. For a coach that has only been a head coach for one season and was 5-7, to get $5.5 million per year, that's more than Ryan Day's making. So Mel Tucker, his agent, did a great job with this. They recognized where Michigan State was negotiating from, and they were able to take advantage of it, not only for the money that he's getting, but the money that he's able to use to hire staff, and his strength and conditioning budget got upped quite a bit as well. So you can't blame him for the money thing. You also can't blame him for the fact that, just plainly black and white, Michigan State is a better football program than Colorado, bar none, and it's not particularly close. Michigan State has the recent success. They've been to the Big Ten championship. They've won the Big Ten championship. They've been to Rose Bowls. They've been to the playoff once. They have an established record of recent success. I know that the last 3 years have been pretty ugly, but you can win at Michigan State, and he knows that firsthand because he's been there, and that's another reason you can't blame him. He's been at Michigan State. I think he said in the press conference, he and his wife got engaged when he was a coach at Michigan State. They got engaged in East Lansing, so it certainly holds some sort of special connection for him. And you add that into the fact that he had worked with Mark D'Antonio, he had been an assistant, I think a GA, while Nick Saban was at Michigan State. There's history there. So clearly this job means something to him. And then finally, this ties into just Michigan State being a better program, the access to talent is much better at Michigan State than it is in Colorado. Colorado high school football isn't anything special, and the states surrounding Colorado don't really have much of a high school football presence when it comes to top-end talent. So the fact that every year you have to hit Texas, you hit California, you have to hit all these out-of-state places in Boulder and CU, and the facilities that CU has are just unbelievable. And I would much rather be in Boulder than East Lansing, but to have to go that far to bring guys in, it's a struggle. And when you're not getting the money to back that up, that just makes it a grind. And not only is Tucker getting the money to recruit and paying the assistants the money to recruit, but he's also in a much more fertile recruiting ground. Ohio's right there. Michigan high school football is, I don't know if it's pretty good, but it's good. Cass Tech's right there. There's some big programs in Michigan to where you can pull local guys. And then when Michigan State's had their most success, they've been able to pull high-end 3-star, low 4-star kids from Ohio, guys that didn't get an Ohio State offer or would be competing for playing time more at Ohio State when they came in with, higher blue chip type guys. They can get those guys to come to Michigan State. And the names, Le'Veon Bell is one of them. So that just, on the surface, when you just look at everything, black and white when it comes to the CU job versus the Michigan State job. It isn't close. Even with what's happened at Michigan State recently and everything going on off the field for Michigan State, which who knows what's going to go on there, and whatever their board of trustees did and their athletic director did with this hire, because they kind of fell ass backwards into Mel Tucker. They're still a mess, but I think I would still have the Michigan State job much clearly higher than the CU job. So all in all, what can you hate here when it comes to those things? He did the best thing for him and his family, got to the bag. He's going to get more support, better recruiting, more money to work with. It's hard to fault a guy for that. He took a better job, and kudos to him. The thing with this story, though, is that leaving CU after 1 year for a better job isn't the issue here. That's not the issue at all. And there really isn't just one issue. There's a lot of issues. And first and foremost, the tweet. If you haven't seen what Mel Tucker tweeted out on, I think it was Saturday, after Friday it came out that he was one of their choices, him and Luke Fickell were going to get interviewed. Things were quiet for, I think, all of Friday through Friday night, and CU fans were freaking out, like, oh my God, what are we going to do? Mel Tucker's going to interview for this job. And then at 11:43, I think Pacific time, Tucker tweeted out, "While I'm flattered to be considered for the head coaching job at MSU football, I am committed to at CU Buffs football for hashtag the build of our program, its great athletes, coaches, and supporters. Hashtag unfinished business, go Buffs. We are relentless culture, the build." I don't know who advised Mel Tucker to tweet this out, whether it was his agent, somebody in the athletic department, or he just decided, you know what, it. I'm going to put this out myself. We're going to put all these rumors to bed. I'm committed to CU. Whoever that person was, or if it was Tucker himself, that was a very rookie mistake. If you look at the other candidate for this job, Luke Fickell, and how he handled everything, there was nothing but silence until afterwards when it came out that, yeah, Luke Fickell did interview, and he said, you know what? I'm staying here. Cincinnati fans were freaking out that he was that number one choice because everybody had said that. He's the logical guy. He's who they want. He makes the most sense. He can recruit Ohio. He has all of those ties. He knows D'Antonio. Looks like a pretty solid program builder throughout his early time at Cincinnati. So he's the guy. And he just waited it out, played his hand right, and didn't take the job. And then talked about it afterwards. That was the easiest and smart thing to do. So whoever decided to give Mel Tucker that advice was a very rookie mistake. And he still deserves some shit for how he handled everything here. But if he didn't tweet this out, the backlash wouldn't have been half as what he's gotten so far for this. The funny thing about it, though, is that that's really not what gets my goat about this whole situation. Because when you look at it, like, hey, if you send this and then the Michigan State donors and supporters, the people putting the money into getting this head coach are like, damn, this guy really is committed. You know what? Let's double back. Let's give him an offer he can't refuse. And they come back to Mel Tucker and they say, oh yeah, you're committed? Here's $5.5 million a year. Here's all this extra money for your assistants. Here is our commitment to an improved strength and conditioning program. All of this great stuff. They double back to you and they give you that. Then you know what? You probably know, damn, I'm going to look like a real big idiot for tweeting out what I did, but I can't refuse this. That makes sense. I totally get that. So the tweet on his face, it lives there forever, even if he eventually deletes it. I don't know how it's still up. I kind of respect that it's still up, though, at this point, like a week later. But I understand it if they double back and just make you an offer that you can't refuse. That makes sense. What doesn't make sense is everything else. And that starts with the 14 months he was at Colorado, from the day he took the job up until this tweet, and really up until the, whatever it was, Tuesday night, that he was meeting with donors to talk about how committed he was to CU while he had just done press in Colorado in the Denver area the whole day when it got reported afterwards that, hey, he had a deal done basically with these guys while he was doing all that. It just doesn't make sense because for those 14 months, all Mel Tucker talked about was integrity, putting the student athlete first, commitment, building a program, being relentless, building a culture, everything you hear from every single college coach, not just football, but every single sport, about all of those things about building a team and being together and the commitment that it takes to do something special and doing it the right way and having accountability. That was something that Tucker preached really strongly in almost every single thing that he said, no matter if it was a post-game press conference, a spring practice press conference, an individual interview, whatever it may be. Tucker really made that a hard line of like, this is who we are, this is who I am, this is what I live. I don't just talk it, I live it. And that's what CU fans heard for 14 months, and I'll include myself in it. We bought it. We bought it hook, line, and sinker. We were all about it. I think that most of us knew that what he was building something good. He was building a foundation for CU. And regardless of whether people think he's a coach that can get Michigan State up to a playoff level, and it remains to be seen what he can do in multiple years in a single job, I thought for the time he was at CU, he did a pretty good job. CU was looking for stability, and Mel Tucker gave them that. And a lot of the things that he preached, it was like, damn, this guy really, he's about it. And, even if he does leave after a couple of seasons, at least we've built that foundation. And that's what most of us were really looking forward to for CU, is to have some bit of foundation after just like the smorgasbord of shit that the last decade plus has been in Boulder. And Mel Tucker was really that, not the first light, because they did win the Pac-12 South in 2016, but it felt different that, man, we're building something that is going to last, and we're going to build something that we can perennially be proud of. And that was something I think for a lot of CU fans, I can't speak for all of us, but it was something we were proud of and something that felt special. So he was real heavy on the practice what you preach shit, and that's what you heard from a lot of players, is that that wasn't just a media thing. That was stuff that he told them. CU signed their highest class in quite a bit for the class that just came in. I think it was top 35. And a lot of those guys were told things about being committed and staying at CU, and that there was promises made there that when you pair with this tweet and Mel Tucker leaving 3 days later, don't quite add up. And so when you add all those things in together, you have somebody who for 14 months was preaching all this stuff, and it seemed like he was living it on the job, and then for it to just all go away like that, it felt like, damn, we just got sold a bill of goods. And one of the funniest things in college football is when it happens to somebody else's fan base, you're like, you idiots, you absolute morons. I can't believe you fell for that. You fell for the snake oil salesman. What, like, college sports is shady. How could you do that? And watching it happen with CU, it's easy to see how when you're a program that just really needs something. And I think CU fans, the core of this is CU fans have wanted to be wanted for so long now. Even with Mike McIntyre, because a couple years ago there were whispers that he was looking at Texas Tech or Georgia Tech or Ole Miss. CU fans at the heart of this all, I think, are so hurt because they just want to feel wanted. And Mel Tucker, for the 14 months he was in Boulder, really made it feel like CU was a special place and a wanted place, the way it felt like in the late 80s, the early 90s, and in the early 2000s. And that's something that CU fans haven't felt in a really long time. And for that to just be taken away so quickly, it's like you get played and there's nothing to do but look at yourself and say, like, damn, we fell for that. We really did. So the next time you laugh at another fan base for that happening, just know it can happen to you too if you're down on your luck and you just get that one coach that comes in and says all the right things. You can fall into that trap too. And that brings me to a larger point of why this was such an issue, or why this is such an issue to me, is that in the end, that for all he said and all he did, at the end of the day, when it comes to CU, I'm not talking about him as a person, he didn't practice what he preached in this situation. And it brought me to the thought that I see on Twitter every once in a while, and I think it's great life advice, that shutting the up sometimes, a lot of the time, is so underrated. Not saying anything is so underrated. And I'm guilty of breaking that a lot, quite often. But I think that this applies to this situation, whether it's the tweet or the comments, I think 3 or 4 months ago, whatever it was, about there being no transfer portal in the real world, which doesn't look great. You know, for these guys that want to preach the culture and accountability, and I get that that's a great sell to people, the best way to avoid situations like this is to just not say anything. Mel Tucker doesn't say anything on Saturday. A lot of this just blows over, and it's, damn, man, we get he was an up-and-coming coach, and you know what? Michigan State just gave him a great offer, and yeah, it really sucks that it was late in the cycle, not even late in the cycle, earlier in the next year's cycle, and that we just had a class come in, and yeah, it's really shitty that he told recruits he was going to stay, but we get the business of it. It makes sense. It sucks, but it makes sense. All he had to do to avoid that was to just be quiet. Or when you do talk, you don't set a trap for yourself. You don't set a trap for yourself over 14 months that if you make one bad move, you're going to fall right into. You know why Lane Kiffin gets the love he gets on Twitter now, and why people just accept the stuff he does, and him taking shots at people, and really just his overall persona after he got trashed for so many years? It's because they realized this is just who Lane Kiffin is. Lane Kiffin doesn't go around making promises publicly and talking about accountability and doing the right thing and all the stuff you hear from coaches that are going to leave their jobs in the next 6 months, say, and about recruits. We all know what Lane Kiffin is. We all know what he does, and I'm not saying he's a bad person, but we know who he is as a coach. And even when you look at his mentor, as in Tucker's, Nick Saban doesn't really do that either. We all know who Nick Saban is. We know what his game is, and it speaks for itself. He doesn't need to say things like that, because when he makes a wrong move, I mean, he's bulletproof at this point, basically, but when he makes a wrong move, he's not falling into a trap he set for himself that's going to go down 200 feet because he tweeted something out or built up this image of being somebody that he's not, even that he's not, but just building that to fall into something. You've put yourself on such a high pedestal that if you just make one small slip, you're going to get killed for it. He doesn't do stuff like that. So after 14 months of preaching all that and tweeting about how you're committed, telling recruits that you're committed, telling their families that you're committed, you're not going anywhere, telling donors that you're committed, even when you have the deal in place, and then this comes out, you come out looking like a fraud. At least as a football coach, at least when it comes to your word in your job, you come out looking like a fraud. And it's not important that he looks like a fraud as a football coach to me. That's not important at all. I'm just a dude with a podcast and a college football fan. My opinion doesn't mean anything. You come out looking like a fraud to your competition. You come out looking like a fraud to your players, the people you recruit, and he's still going to be able to recruit well. But if you think that Kentucky isn't going to be on the recruiting trail going head-to-head with Mel Tucker after those Ohio kids, and Mark Stoops isn't going to say, hey, you really sure that you want to go play for that guy? He just left his school after 1 year. I've been at Kentucky now for 8 years. The last 3, hell, Florida State's been interested in me. I haven't moved a muscle. I'm here. I'm not selling you on building a program. We've built it. You know what we're about. You know what we've built. You know what we do. You see Lynn Bowden? You see Benny Snell? You see the rest of the kids we're putting into the NFL right now? You want to go to Michigan State? Is that guy going to be there next year? And, hey, he's 5-7 as a coach. What has he done? You think that that's not the type of stuff that's going to go on in those recruiting battles. And that's just what Kentucky could say. What's going to happen when you're going up against Ryan Day? What's going to happen when you're going up against Jim Harbaugh or James Franklin and these other coaches that are dogs, that have been in these battles, that have been to conference championships, won conference championships? So that's the battle that Mel Tucker is going to have to face behind the scenes now. And he's going to get a ton of support from the Michigan State community, and rightfully so. And they're going to be able to recruit. And I think he's going to be able to build something good there. But if you think that what happened here isn't going to play a role in his future, I think that you're sorely mistaken, because it's going to be a big deal. And so that's another piece of it is the battle he's going to have to face there. And ultimately, the most important thing about this situation, and the thing that upsets me the most about it, is for those 16 kids that came in the 2020 recruiting class for CU, 8 of whom early enrolled and are already in Boulder and were told that he was going to be there and this was something that they were going to build together. They're hurt, man. I've seen a couple of things that they've said on Twitter and their reaction to it, and it sucks. It really, really sucks to see that. And you know, I've followed college football closely enough to where I know what it is. I know how the sausage is made, and it really doesn't bother me at this point. And anybody who knows me knows I hope these athletes are getting paid on the side. I hope they're getting any type of money under the table that they can. And the usual response to when these coaches leave is just like, hey, well, if you're a kid, you shouldn't recruit, or you shouldn't go to a place just for a head coach or a person. But these are people they're building relationships with. And in a lot of cases, especially when it comes to CU, these are out-of-state kids. You have to build those relationships, and you have to say, hey, I really have a relationship with that guy. He's going to help ease me into being in Boulder. And quite honestly, for a lot of the athletes that come in from out of state or really anywhere into CU, that's a culture shock, man. From Boulder into some of these places these kids are coming from, you need those relationships. And to not have that when you're 18 years old, that's a big, big deal. And that's just the underbelly of it that really upsets me about this situation and how it was handled, and the fact that now that there's this new signing day in February, it's not like it was before when, hey, if it's December, you can get out and you can kind of figure out what you're going to do. Now teams are pretty close, if not right at or above that scholarship limit. The staffs are pretty much finalized around the country. Spring ball starts in like less than a month. If you're a kid that just signed with CU and you've already enrolled, what are you going to go do? Are you going to try to hit up somebody else, some other Power 5 program, like, hey, please give me a spot? Maybe some of the guys can do that, but not all of them can. And that's a situation that when I go back to it, for an 18-year-old, for anyone it sucks, but for an 18-year-old who has been promised certain things, that really, really sucks. And just so I can throw this in there and take a shot here, not that it's important in the grand scheme of things, Tucker unretired 3 CU uniform numbers to give to these freshman kids on signing day 2 weeks ago, and then just dips town. Like, what? You've not only dipped town on the kids, but you do something like that where they probably had to ask those dudes, like, hey, do you mind if we unretire your number? Like, we're really trying to get the talent up here. Like, it'd be a big deal. And then you just dip out of town. Like, cool, man. That's really awesome. And I get that Mel Tucker couldn't control that Mark D'Antonio resigned a day before National Signing Day. And in an equally scummy move, by the way, because D'Antonio is a grumpy-ass boomer who didn't get to control every single detail of how the end of his career ended and what MSU did next, despite the fact that D'Antonio's driven that program off of a cliff the last 3 years. I get he can't control any of that, and it's one of those things that, hey, a job opens in February, it's just a bad situation. But he could control his response to it. And Mel Tucker handled everything about his response to it about as poorly as anybody could have done. And that's really surprising given what we saw from him in his time at CU, and even before then, from what people said about him at Georgia, what Nick Saban and Jim Tressel have said about him. It was surprising to me that he handled this so poorly. And just one more thing, we're a month away from spring ball when all this is going down. After you just signed your first full class, at CU and probably told those guys just how important this class was to the future of the program, and telling them that, hey, we need leaders, we need accountability, we need leadership, we need all this stuff. And I'm committed to you. I'm committed to this university. And something like this happens. Like I said, and I'm kind of wrapping up here because I think I've gotten everything off my chest, and I hope this has been concise. Please leave me some feedback, whether it's in the YouTube comments or on the channel or on Twitter at Dubsco, wherever it is. Leave me some feedback on what you thought. I don't think Mel Tucker is a bad person. I don't think he's a bad dude. I'm not even going to call him a liar. I think he lied here, but I don't think as a person like he's a liar or a bad husband or a bad father or whatever. I think Mel Tucker is a good dude who didn't think his actions through and didn't necessarily realize what his actions were going to do to people far beyond him and the people closest to him, is the best way to put it. Because I don't want to call it selfish, because you do that for your family and you're able to, that's a big deal to move your family again after that. So I don't want to say it's selfish, but I think that it's a little narrow in its thinking of what it's going to do to other people just outside of you and your immediate people that are close to you. He's a good dude who throughout the weekend and Monday and Tuesday night did some foul shit. And that's the best way for me to put it. And that's what I think about all of this. As for CU going forward, Darren Chiaverini is the interim head coach. I'm cool with it. They need somebody to keep those recruits as committed as possible. Not even as committed as possible, but just have somebody that they can trust and who's committed to the university. He's always been that guy. If there's going to be somebody who's Mr. Colorado in that sense to be the guy to lead this, I think he's the perfect guy when it comes to interim, and you just go out there and you see how he does. There's absolutely no need for them to make a hire in mid-February to try to figure this thing out. You have all year. Just give him the year to play it out and see what happens. See if he's head coach material. If not, then you're the first team out there on the market for the next wave of guys to go get somebody. So I'm excited to see what Darren Chiaverini does there. And as a guy who's been just a buff for his whole life, if there's one guy who deserves the shot, it's him. So I'm really rooting hard for him, and I want to see him succeed. When it comes to names of guys to look at from the outside, the names I've heard, I'm not enthused about a lot of them. Mark Helfrich, absolutely not. Vance Joseph, absolutely not. Jim McElwain, 100 times absolutely not. Troy Calhoun, no as well. The only ones that I'm really with are Ken Nui-Matalolo. That would be fun. I don't know if he'd be 100% committed to the option, but to have somebody that has built something so tough and so based on culture at Navy, I think would be pretty cool to see. He could recruit the West Coast well, I think, with the Polynesian ties. That would be fun. That would be something different and something unique to CU that I wouldn't mind seeing. Brian Harsin at Boise State, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'd also be fine with that too. He's a guy who's sustained that culture and that program at Boise State. I'd be good with that one. Ryan Walters, Missouri's defensive coordinator, Bruce Feldman wrote about him being a name that's going to get a look. I really know nothing about him, but that's a name I'm watching now. There's a couple others here that were also big no's for me. Butch Jones, we've been down that road, almost did that once, dodged that bullet, don't want to do it again. Cal defensive coordinator Tim DeRuyter, no as well. I would much rather them just give the full-time job to Chiaverini, and if he fails in spectacular fashion, then he fails. But he's going to recruit, and if he's able to recruit for like a year and a half at a pretty decent rate, then the next guy that comes in can have a strong talent foundation to work on. But I would much rather have that and it completely blow up in their face than Tim DeRuyter, Butch Jones, or God forbid, Mark Helfrich come in. No way. That's all I got to say about it. I needed to get this off my chest. I thought this was a great platform. I hope CU fans find this. I hope my buddies listen to this and are able to vent a little bit with me, and we can talk our way through this. But I wanted to get this out there on a platform. This was the best way to do it, and I hope I made it clear that my frustration and being upset with this, it isn't directed toward Mel Tucker, the man. I don't know him personally. I probably never will know him But it all comes down to just the things he said as a coach and the things he said leading the CU program and being upset at that, and quite honestly, just the lies that were told. And really, ultimately, I know none of this matters. It's football, it's college football, it's slimy, it's dirty. We're all going to die in the heat death of the universe anyway, eat Arby's, etc., all of that stuff. But I'm really just disappointed for the kids in this situation. They got a raw deal, and I hope that they make the most of a bad situation this season. And for CU fans, really go out and support those kids and those coaches and the people that are committed to CU football, because they deserve it. On the flip side, welcome to the big leagues, Mel Tucker. This he's going to be watched very closely this season, and I know I'm very much looking forward to Ohio State's game with Michigan State on October 17th, and that stretch of season that Michigan State has where they, I'm pulling it up right now, they play at Iowa, then Michigan, Ohio State, at Indiana, Minnesota, a bye week, and at Penn State. I'm looking forward to watching Michigan State this season and watching that Ohio State-Michigan State game on October 17th. That's my own little personal bit of revenge this season. So looking forward to that, and got a close eye on Michigan State, and obviously CU really rooting hard for the boys this season and hope that they're able to make the most of this. So that's pretty much it, man. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you didn't, if you're a Michigan State fan, I'm sorry. Go to the YouTube page, watch the Le'Veon Bell highlights. Maybe that'll make you like me more. Maybe not, since you know that I'm an Ohio State fan now. So, whatever. I'm sorry. But I wanted to get my thoughts out there and talk about it. Let me know what you think on Twitter, @DubsCo. Follow along with the show on SoundCloud, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts. All the new episodes come in there. And please go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Colton Denning. I'm not blowing smoke when I say I think that it's the best source for college football highlights on the internet. I do mostly long-form videos, no music, none of the wild edits. There's for sure an audience for that. That's not my old ass at all. I just want to hear the commentary, and I know there's a lot of people like that. So I try to make those videos for the people that like that stuff. Seems like it's gaining a lot of traction right now. And if you like college football highlights, especially this time of the year where there isn't much content coming out, I'm pumping stuff out almost every single day. Current players, former players, guys who are under the radar, guys who are going to the NFL draft, whatever it may be, I got you covered there. So youtube.com/Colton Denning. Check it out, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what you think. That's it. Thank you guys for listening. It was a lot of fun recording this and trying to sort through my feelings here. I hope that it wasn't too jumbled, and I hope that I stop being lazy and continue to record these episodes for you guys if you like them. So holler at me there. I will talk to you guys hopefully very soon. This is the Two Stripes Podcast, and I'm Colton Denning. I'll catch you later.